What's up, investors? It's the Russian dude. Today, let's talk about how the Russian military really liberates Ukrainian cities. How do people on occupied territories live? And what do they think about the soldiers of a foreign country marching across their very own land? And Russian soldiers who discover more realities of this war and as a result refusing to fight in Putin's mess. We'll discuss the story of Maxine Perova, a decorated military veteran who brought a huge dilemma upon the Russian military. We'll then walk through the devastated landscapes of eastern Ukraine, focusing on the city of Pokrovsk, a place once vibrant and even supportive of Russia, and now serves as an example of the tragedy unfolding in the region. And finally, we will reflect on the broader implications of a conflict that puts people against those they once considered their own, and those who still think that Putin is doing a good thing in Ukraine and liberates them from oppressive leadership will finally see the real side of this man. Maxim Perov, a veteran of special military operation and a recipient of 4 governmental rewards, including the prestigious Zhukov medal, found his life ultimately altered while on military leave. During this period, Maxim underwent a gender transition surgery, emerging as Maxine Perova. This deeply personal decision, however, came at a significant professional cost. Despite a desire to continue serving, Maxine was dismissed from the military, and the entire story became such a huge dilemma and a headache for the Russian military leadership, propaganda, authorities, pretty much everyone. A person who was praised and paraded across state media in the past so much has now completely disappeared from public eye. On the one hand, this is a very dedicated and patriotic person who went through years of service while having impeccably clean background. A perfect propagandistic individual, the one that they show on TV as a perfect human being, with a perfect blonde hair, blue eyes, appropriate school shape. Wait a second, sounds like we're talking about another country from different time. Well, anyways, it does not change the fact. Propaganda never changes. And so during one of his vacations from the military, he went literally from the front line straight into the surgery room and became Maxine Perova. Just like that, the Russian propaganda completely backfired in its own face. How can such a person be the hero of Russia? What about traditional family values? What about the law that actually imprisoned such people? The best decision the propaganda could make was to just completely ignore and forget this person ever existed. Articles were deleted, footage was erased, and there are very few traces online right now, but, well, you can still find some if you try. The Russian propaganda is very double-faced. It always picks the most convenient stories and footage just to reinforce its own messages. But eventually, unfortunately for them, such stories like Maxine Perova do emerge from time to time. And this is what slowly but surely destroys the credibility of propaganda, even for the seasoned Z patriots. Not too many people in Russia believe them anyways, but as time passes, fewer and fewer people will remain on their side. I mean, at first, the propaganda was strong. It was even able to justify the invasion into Ukraine under the premise that this was a liberating invasion, however contradictive it sounds. But they cannot control the internet. That's why stories, photos and videos from these liberated cities, they find their way online. And people start to see with their own eyes the real cost of Putin's war. How does the liberation process looks like and its consequences primarily? And what people who live on these occupied territories think about all this disaster. Recently, a photograph from war-torn Vuhledar emerged online. On the top of fully destroyed 5-story residential building flutters a replica of the Soviet victory banner, the very same banner hoisted above the Reichstag in 1945. Yet, this is not a historically or politically significant building. No, it is a common residential apartment building where hundreds of regular families used to live peacefully just a couple of years ago. It is the very same indistinguishable building from those found in countless cities across both Russia and Ukraine, the very same Soviet design, the same everything. So most people, once they saw the picture, they were able to draw parallels and imagine what if this happened to their home instead. The picture, which was supposed to invoke patriotic feelings and compare the defeat of Nazistic Germany and the capture of a small town in eastern Ukraine, well, in reality it invoked completely the opposite feelings. Even Russians themselves found it ridiculous and meaningless. The contrast between the symbol of victory and the devastation below it shows the real scale of tragedy that fell upon Ukraine, and the way the Russian soldiers still see it as a liberating crusade. Vuhledar, once home to 14,000 people, has been reduced to rubble. Just this one apartment building was able to bring strong emotions among Russians, and there are hundreds more buildings exactly like this in Vuhledar alone. Then there are hundreds towns more like Vuhledar, which were destroyed as well. This is when you finally realize the scale, the true scale of this still ongoing tragedy. Then there are much bigger cities than Vuhledar, with 5 to 10 times more population that were fully destroyed as well. Bakhmut, Avdiivka, Pokrovsk, Marinka, Oleshki, Mariupol, New York, Soledar, Krasnokharali, Sichansk, Kremina, Svatovo, Kupiansk and Vovchansk. These are just a very few towns and cities that got media attention and were extensively covered by independent reporters, including here on YouTube. How many more of them were completely destroyed, lives shattered, and not a single person ever heard about the stories of these people. The cities where they grew up, studied, met their first friends and first loves, and now just piles of stones and dirt. On June 10, 2022, after the war has already started, Pokrovsk was a quiet provincial town of approximately 70,000 people population. The mayor was seen expressing gratitude to volunteers from the Mercy Foundation and the Sanctity of Motherhood, organizations offering aid during uncertain times. The atmosphere, though infiltrated with concerns of war, remained relatively calm. The only sign of conflict was a lone Ural army truck driving from time to time in the background. Pokrovsk, believe it or not, was predominantly Russian-speaking, with Mayor Ruslan Tribushkin and local officials communicating in Russian freely, affiliated with even the pro-Russian opposition bloc political party. Tribushkin and many residents held hopes for Russian-Ukrainian friendship. The invasion in 2022 shattered these illusions. The community, once open to cultural and linguistic ties with Russia, began distancing itself. As refugees from war-torn eastern cities flooded into Pokrovsk, the city became a haven. "We came from Marinka," one woman recounted. "For 5 straight days the town has been under constant shelling," another person said. The mayor and local authorities worked tirelessly to support these displaced individuals, emphasizing unity and compassion over a rhetoric of hatred. But the illusion of safety was rapidly vanishing. On August 7, 2023, Pokrovsk was struck by 2 missiles in a brutal double-tap attack, a tactic targeting first responders following the initial strike. So, yeah, the next time the Russian military gives us another excuse, saying that they are targeting only military objects, or that Ukrainians themselves, they intercept our missiles on top of residential area, so it is their fault. Well, these excuses never been and are no longer valid. The assault resulted in unfortunate 10 deaths and 88 injuries, and this was not an isolated or accidental incident. Earlier in March 2022, a Russian strike has already signaled the approaching dangers. The repeated attacks eroded any residual pro-Russian sentiments among the residents. The people of Pokrovsk, many of whom were Russian-speaking or even ethnic Russians holding Ukrainian citizenships, found themselves under the assault by those they once considered allies. Most of cities switched to Ukrainian language as their main tool for communication, not because it is more convenient or it is easier to communicate, but to distance themselves even further from Russians, to have nothing in common with them. The city's transformation from a place of refuge and resilience to one of ruin and resentment mirrors the broader disillusionment within the aggressors. Pokrovsk serves as an unfortunate example of how real Russian liberation of Ukraine looks like. Pro-Ukrainian cities will never accept the aggressors invading their boundaries anyways, but Pokrovsk was pretty pro-Russian settlement. These were exactly the people Putin swore to protect against those filthy Ukrainians. There were no even Ukrainian soldiers inside the city at the moment of the attack. Russians destroyed it to the ground just because it was on their way. just to test the military readiness, or maybe just a final graduation test for some of artillery personnel. The destruction of Pokrovsk is the symbol of Russian quote-unquote liberation of Ukraine. As the conflict escalated, a dissonance emerged between the narratives pushed by Russian officials and the real life. President Vladimir Putin, in conversations with young leaders, expressed surprise at finding people in Zaporozhye who were just like us, considering themselves Russians. So, the question is, why would you come to their cities, destroy their homes, and put your flag there, just to realize that you were actually fighting against your own people? Putin is extremely contradictory. I don't even want to try to figure out his chain of thoughts. At first he says that we need to protect Ukrainians. Then he fights against the very same Ukrainians, claiming they are bad people. And once there is nothing left, suddenly he realizes that, wait a second, these were our people. How did they end up here? Must have been Ukrainians who forced them to live in a combat zone, right? Who else? Well, if you try to understand the logic of Putin, you will go insane, so I guess no wonder he is. The official Russian narrative often attempts to justify the war through various lenses: demilitarization, denazification, halting NATO's expansion, or protecting Russian speakers. Yet the consequences have been counterproductive to these stated goals. The destruction of predominantly Russian-speaking regions has not only destroyed infrastructure and homes, but has also forced these populations to turn extremely pro-Ukrainian. They did not ask to be liberated, and yet they did. After seeing all these monstrosities, no wonder fewer and fewer Russian soldiers are willing to fight Putin's war. Increased financial incentives, sign-up bonuses, they just simply no longer help. The regime of Putin already grinded every Z-patriot who was willing to sacrifice his life for his leader. And once these stories come back home and reach relatives and friends, this also has completely the opposite effect on the people. Russians do not want to go to Ukraine and revenge their lost family members or friends. Instead, they open their eyes to obvious war crimes that Putin is doing right now. And this results in the best anti-military campaign that even the best propagandists could ever dream of. The conflict has also intensified anti-Russian sentiments globally, achieving the opposite of any unifying objective. The actions taken have initiated one of the largest surges of Russophobia in modern history, isolating Russia diplomatically and culturally. Which brings me to the original purpose of my work: to defend whatever is left of Russian reputation in front of you guys. And once again, I thank you all for being so open-minded and not generalizing and stereotyping every single Russian you meet. This is not Russia, this is Putin's Russia. And together, with your help, one day, we will take it back. Well, there you have it, guys. For more videos like this, please subscribe to my channel. If you wish to see some bonus content, there are links down below. Thanks so much for watching. See you tomorrow.
We won't succumb to their tricks, the facade they try to sell. Their twisted words and feeble claims are resolve they cannot quell. We see through their lies, their feeble attempts to sway. We do not believe in ridiculous Russian propaganda.